you treat this topic like nobody else does. Who talks about senior sex, especially when it comes to our conversation today? Thank you so much for joining us again on Second Act TV. I'm so happy to welcome back senior sexpert Joan Price, the author of Naked at Our Age, talking out loud about senior sex, and the topic of today's discussion, sex after grief, navigating our sexuality after losing our beloved. Joan, thank you so much for being here again.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Silke. I love talking to you. You're always so interesting yourself and well prepared, and you really read my books before you interview me. What could be better? What's not to love?
Well, who wouldn't want to read your books? I mean, that's
Thank
that's
you.
what you're known for. You treat this topic like nobody else does. Who talks about senior sex, especially when it comes to our conversation today, which is sex after grief. And you and I already had a talk about that. I have your book sitting right there. You've expanded it. You have a new edition of the book now, where you as you told me and as you wrote, there's other things that you had to add, what you learned from Commons, etc. Let's talk about that briefly. What drove you to write this or to expand it?
Well, the first edition of Sex After Grief came out in 2019. 5 years later, I'm wondering, but what's changed for the
Mhm,
grievers who sent me their stories in
mhm,
2019? Some of them were exploring dating again, some had met someone and were really excited about it. Some just couldn't figure out how to, whether they'd ever want to be with someone else again. I
mhm,
think I am, maybe I'm not. I got the urges, I don't know what to do with them. I thought, well, let's make this book significant for the long term.
mhm.
What can you expect 5 years later?
One of the things that I really want to focus on, Joan, as you say, what happened to the people, is that there's two people, and they're not always widow or widower. And especially for the people we're talking here today on this channel, our audience is primarily looking for love. There are in relationships, there are in marriages, but that's very dominant. And at our age, we're going to run into widow or widower, as you well know. And that brings so many issues to the table if you don't understand what a person who's lost a loved one goes through. And one of the top things that what struck me, what you added, is how do we understand that you can love two people at once, that the person you're dating is not giving up, if you will, on the person that passed.
That's such a huge issue. And that is one
Mhm.
I have a whole chapter called Two Loves
Yes.
about exactly this. And for the person who's lost their spouse or their partner, there is, will I lose the love for my beloved if I fall in love with someone else? And for the person dating that person, where's my place in this? How can we possibly have a relationship that's just ours if the person I'm falling in love with is still in love with a dead partner?
Right.
I got an email recently from someone who said, I'm dating someone new. We're really hitting it off fine. I have great hopes for this relationship, except
Mm-hmm.
that she still has all the wedding photos from her previous marriage on the walls of
Mm-hmm.
the bedroom where we're
Mm-hmm.
having sex. Well,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much going into that for the bereaved who is trying to start anew. There is a feeling of guilt. Should I even be doing this? Am I betraying
Mm-hmm.
my partner, my deceased partner? And the answer to that is no,
Mm-hmm.
that if your partner loved you, they
Mm-hmm.
wanted for you to find love again, to fully live, to not stay in the darkness of
Mm-hmm.
grief,
Mm-hmm.
to venture out, to be able to protect others. And we're so lucky when we made that explicit
Mm-hmm.
when our partner was alive. Robert and I did, the person I'm with now did
Mm-hmm.
with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And so for people who are listening, I want to pivot to this. If you are lucky enough to have your partner with you right now,
Mm-hmm.
sit down with them and say, this is going to be a hard conversation, but I really want to have it. It's going to be so valuable to one of us later. If I predecease you, I want to give you my blessing for finding love again, for finding sexual pleasure again, for making contact, connections with people in whatever way feels right to you. I give you my blessing. I love you and I want you to be happy. And then to
Yeah.
hear that back from your partner. This, for people listening, this is the most important message I have for you today
Mm-hmm.
is if you are lucky enough to have your person, please have that conversation because
Mm-hmm.
I hear from people who didn't have that conversation
Mm-hmm.
and are feeling so guilty.
Yeah.
Then for the person dating that person, the one who goes, how can I have sex with the wedding pictures? Of,
Mm-hmm.
maybe have sex somewhere else because you do not have the right, nor should you even consider asking your new partner to take
Mm-hmm.
down the wedding pictures.
Mm-hmm. You brought up something interesting right now. Maybe have sex somewhere else, but how is? Let's think about that for a minute, though. First, I mean, why did you have sex there in the first place? I'm really trying to get into, the practicality of this.
Yeah.
You're in there because obviously she brought you in there. So
Yeah.
in order to have it somewhere else, there has to be a reason, or you kind of have to address the
Yeah.
pictures that are in fact bothering you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that properly and not be, as you say, like I don't have the right or they don't have the right? At what point do you say something where it is too much?
Well, I think if you want a relationship that's authentic and honest
Mm-hmm.
going from the beginning, you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to hide that that makes you uncomfortable, but there are
Mm-hmm.
ways to say it. I'm just doing this off the top of my head, but I I fully honor your relationship with insert name.
Mm-hmm.
It's making me kind of uncomfortable though to be
Mm-hmm.
having sex with you under his eyes
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
wedding pictures. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if maybe just when I'm here, could they be taken away from what's in view of the bed? Or would you consider putting them in the living room?
That's a great, because this way you're saying it with a lot of empathy or
Yeah.
understanding anyway. But you're going there because it is, after a while that is going to bother somebody, that is going to build resentment, I think.
And performance anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could see if
Yeah.
someone gets it stuck in their mind that the former spouse is looking down at them. They go, how do I even go through with this?
Right.
So I think it's okay to say what's bothering you, but realize still you have no right over how your new partner mourns. You could also say, if that's not acceptable to you, and I fully understand if it's
Mm-hmm.
not,
Mm-hmm.
could we have sex at my house next time?
Okay. That's why this, I think, is such an important conversation, is when you deal with this and you absolutely don't know how to handle it. I mean,
Yeah.
I briefly dated a widower. There wasn't a lot there, so I didn't go into the depth of it, of really worrying about it. But I did, when the pictures were, I felt like, okay, I felt like, I asked you about that, that she was always going to be on a pedestal. She was always going to be on the pedestal, and that I would always be a lower priority. And I don't know whether that's out of my insecurities or out of the way he put her on the pedestal. How you hear that a lot?
Oh, I love what you're saying. I love how you're describing that
Hmm.
because some version of that is what I hear from people
Hmm.
who are trying to date grievers.
Hmm.
Now, and what they say to me is, I'm worried I'll never come first.
Hmm.
Well, you can come first in the present.
Hmm.
You can't necessarily come first in the past. And what I try to do in my Two Loves chapter, and I know this so intimately because I've experienced this. I
Hmm.
didn't think I could ever not get over my love for Robert because I don't want to get over it. I
Right.
treasure it. I
Hmm.
want it. I don't want to lose any of those memories. But I knew that in order to let someone else in, I needed to make space in my heart. And what I came to in my own life, and I hope it's helpful to others, is what I shared with Robert made my heart bigger,
Hmm.
didn't constrict it. And it made it so big that there's room for another person.
Hmm.
My new partner and I often discuss our deceased spouses. We share
Hmm.
stories.
Hmm.
We agree that if they were both alive, we'd probably have a lot of fun, the four of us. I'm not saying in bed. I don't think
Yeah.
our previous spouses would have liked that, but there was room. There are ways that his wife and I would have connected beautifully. There are ways that he and Robert would have connected beautifully. He tells me that he gets messages from his deceased wife telling telling him to take care of me, make sure I'm okay, make sure nurture this relationship. She's rooting for us. And all of that is beautiful. And how much
Hmm.
of it are we making up? It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
It doesn't
Hmm.
matter.
What I find is so interesting too, and what made this relevant, and I don't know, did you by chance watch the Golden Bachelorette?
Yes, I did.
Okay, okay. I was pleasantly surprised. I'm not surprised at how much I actually liked it and what you could actually take away from it. Because the first one, I mean, I'm not the Bachelor franchise fan at all. I've
I'm not either.
never ever watched it. I did watch the Golden Bachelor because people are talking about it at our age. But what I think was displayed very beautifully is what somebody goes through when they're a widow,
Yes.
and how she
And for
did.
the men too.
Yes, because there were a
Oh,
lot.
yeah.
Exactly. And I think she had trouble connecting with somebody who was not widowed. I
Yes.
think. I think, and she chose a widower, but it really pointed out what a non-griever needs to know, and what the griever needs to understand about the non-griever. What did
Yes.
you take away from? What did you like about that? What's a good message?
I watched both,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd never watched any of the
Yeah.
Bachelor franchise in
Me
my life
exactly.
before, but I
Mm-hmm.
watched every episode. I was impatient with her just because she was seeing, I can see myself with him for the rest of my life. She said that over and over about different people.
Mm-hmm.
I wish she had just grounded herself in the present
Mm-hmm.
and said, for right now,
Mm-hmm.
this kind of relationship would be best for me. Instead of thinking, I need to pick my future husband on the basis of some
Yeah.
TV monitored dates that had camera people every minute except for one overnight when
Yeah.
nothing sexual happened because I said it wasn't going to. If instead she's for right now, can we date more? I want to date this person more.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see, we feel compatible now. Can we date and figure it out?
Yeah. Which totally translates into reality, into real life,
Yeah,
what we
that's
need to
real
do.
life.
And I know one of the things that you brought up as well, and added or expanded on it, is when, how do you know if you're ready? See,
Yeah.
I personally didn't think she was ready, with the way that she talked, and she was so, I'll call it, stuck in the past. I think she tried and tried, she wanted to, but I don't think she really was, my
I think it was
opinion.
because she was doing this future business.
Yes.
If
Okay.
she had just done it as being ready to date right now, being ready to get to know these wonderful men she was presented to. I really liked a lot of the men. You know, some of the ones that went pretty quickly, I really liked. And then some of the ones that stayed, I really liked. I think she was stuck in the past because she was thinking it was all or nothing.
Hmm.
And I'm always advising people to take it a step at a time. What are you ready for right now?
Hmm. What do you think one of the biggest mistakes that, I don't know if it's if both widow or widower, maybe let's, or is there a difference that the bereaved make in this process?
In thinking that they have to be totally ready for them to explore.
Okay.
Both of them, both, it is non-gendered what happens there. In thinking that I must be ready for a new commitment because that's what I always believed I needed and wanted.
Hmm.
And especially if they were raised in the year I was, that's what's supposed to happen before sex.
Hmm.
It's you're a new person now. Not only is this a new era, we're many generations past
Hmm.
that teaching, we have reinvented ourselves over and over and over again
Over again.
in
Hmm.
getting older. And
Hmm.
we've said, this doesn't serve us anymore. I'm
Hmm.
not going to do that or believe that or think that or want that anymore.
Hmm.
And then we come to new things. This is what serves me now. If we could think more in this is what serves me now rather than this is what I always thought I was supposed to want.
Yeah, well, that makes total sense. What about the non-griever? What are the biggest mistakes there? I know for me, it's assuming that there's always a third person in the relationship. Again, I don't know whether that's insecurity or whether that's true, but what are some of the things that non-grievers really need to understand?
Let me just take his and her just to not to have confusing pronouns. So let's say she is mourning her husband and
Hmm.
wants to date the new person. And he thinks, A, she's stuck with her former spouse.
Hmm.
She isn't really ready to date. She I will not be able to replace him in her eyes.
Hmm.
Okay, you're not going to replace anybody. You're going to be new. This is a new
Hmm.
relationship. It will
Hmm.
not be anything like the one she had before, any that you've had before.
Hmm.
You are not going to replace her previous partner in her heart, but there is room for both of you, but not if you rush her. Ask her throughout the process, how can I pleasure you today, perhaps? Would you like to just kiss? Make it a continuing dialogue.
Yeah.
And it may seem, oh, but oh boy, how can that be sexy? It can be really sexy. It can be really sexy if you're talking.
And the guilt is normal, and both of you need to understand that.
Guilt is normal, but guilt is often based on what you think should happen, what you think is expected, what you think your partner, your deceased partner, would think of what you're doing. And if that's going on for you, and you never had the conversation that I just recommend people have, then I'd like you to have that conversation in your own mind and say, sweetheart, come to me and tell me, what wish do you have for me? And you will hear the voice of your partner. And I don't mean this in a woo woo way, I mean
Hmm.
because you do know in your heart,
Hmm.
saying, don't stay in grief, find joy.
Well, Joan, thank you so much. I will, of course, link to your books, to all your books, but especially this new edition, which is so important, not, as we said earlier, not just to the griever, but to those getting into a relationship. You go places where no other author has gone, and it's just invaluable. So again, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to another discussion soon on Second Act TV.
Thank you.